Hello, good to see you again. Today we'll show you 10 most anticipated video games of 2020. Even with the cavalcade of games still yet to release this year, the end of E3 has signified that little to nothing else will be announced for release for some time, meaning the lineup of titles currently set to come out in 2020 probably won't be changing. As such, this is a prime opportunity to have a look into what awaits players next year. From the absolutely breathtaking Cyberpunk 2077 to the splendor of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, players have a lot in store for them come 2020, with a lot of 7s in-game titles, apparently. But which of these games should players be keeping their eyes most keenly on? And why? There are plenty of excellent-looking titles dropping over 2020, and so managing to not go bankrupt while making all of these purchases may end up being a rather tough challenge, especially with incentives like Keanu Reeves being dangled like carrots in front of players' faces. Though, never fear, here are the rankings for the most anticipated games of the seemingly far-off year of 2020, so that you may better prioritize. 10. Gods and Monsters. Revealed during Ubisoft's press conference, this game is the next title from the developers of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Most see this as a Breath of the Wild clone, and it is fair to see why, with a fantasy setting and cartoon-esque aesthetic, comparisons were inevitable. So, why did this game make the list of the most anticipated of 2020? Basically, AC Odyssey's ancient Greece setting meant the developers obviously felt the need to include some of the famed myths for the player to battle, or in the case of Atlantis, explore. Odyssey has certainly moved in that direction, especially with its DLC. But where Assassin's Creed is more contracts and hidden blades, this can be, well, gods and monsters. This makes this game the one that the studio clearly always wanted to make, and with this added passion, it should be something special.
February 25th, 2020.
9. Marvel's Avengers. The prospect of a fully fledged, co-op Avengers game has been a really exciting one, and finally next year we'll be getting one. The material released so far has not been the most impressive, some of those costumes particularly so, but from what we have heard about the gameplay, along with the all-star voice cast that will be featured, there is still plenty of reason to be optimistic in face of concerns. Honestly, if Crystal Dynamics manages to deliver on even half of the brilliant-sounding elements they have promised, fans of Marvel's premier super team will have a game they can truly celebrate, rather than most of the App Store toss we've been treated to across 8. Dying Light 2. The first Dying Light game presented players with quite an odd premise, a zombie game featuring parkour mechanics. Though, this strange premise actually somehow managed to work, with the combination of the undead, melee combat and traversal elements making for a rather enjoyable game. The second title in the series seems set to follow this same route, bringing players a really fun game, with its new features seeming to make for a game of far larger scale and more interesting elements. The most intriguing addition is that of consequences, which are choices in the game radically changing the city and saving or killing character NPCs, much like your choices in something like The Witcher or Mass Effect might. Also, the developers have also said that the main story only accounts for around 50% of Dying Light 2's content, meaning that the title will likely be enormous. These promises, alongside already great gameplay, means Techland would have to try very hard to make a bad game.
Will create the world to come.
7. Halo Infinite. A new Halo game is always exciting, but this one especially so, given the drought of Xbox games over the past few years. Unlike all previous games in the series, the game seems to be taking more of an open-world approach, bringing the sandbox gameplay Halo is known for to a much larger scale. Unfortunately, fans are yet to see any actual footage of how the game actually plays, and details on the story have been very sparse, it only being obvious that the new tale will take place after the events of Halo 5 and see Master Chief go up against the newly evil Cortana, making it hard to put this title any higher up the list. Nonetheless, this game is one to keep an eye on. 6. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Out of all the Final Fantasy games in the long-running series, this is probably the one most wanted to see remade. From all the footage seen so far, this massive update seems incredibly promising. New graphics bring the game to the peak of this generation's graphical fidelity, giving all of those classic characters and moments that fans love a beautiful modern tint. Maybe, just maybe, 7 Frank Remake will live up to the version of the game that exists through fans' nostalgia specs. The update to gameplay seems to be similarly promising too. The mix of third-person combat and minor turn-based elements, making for a fantastic blend of new and old that should please those who played the original as well as those who are simply jumping on here.
You can have it.
5. Elden Ring. Much like a new Halo game, there is always a large crowd that get very excited for a new title from Software because some people are masochists, I suppose. This newest title, Elden Ring, seems to be a blend of all of the previous games from the studio, the medieval themes of Dark Souls, the twisted gore of Bloodborne and some of the more Eastern-looking armor of their recent Sekiro title. Oh, did I mention that along with the incredible pedigree of the developers at From Software, Game of Thrones creator George R. Martin is also working on the game? Because he is. The addition of such an author will hopefully add a more fully realized lore to the game, bringing a literary quality to From Software's traditionally very gameplay-focused experiences. Truly, this is full of exciting promise. 4. Watch Dogs Legion. After the first game in the Watch Dogs series managed to become arguably disappointing release of the generation, it's a surprise that Ubisoft has bothered continuing with the hacking title and an even bigger one, that the third game looks so incredibly promising. The new setting of a near future of London is very exciting, and the gameplay addition of being able to play as any NPC is a novel one that has managed to make many excited about a very fledgling series that, up until now, has not attracted very much positive attention. Whether or not Legion actually lives up to these high expectations is another matter, but there's good reason to be optimistic that Ubisoft have finally learned their lesson on overpromising.
I know what you're thinking. Where do we start? Open your eyes and take a look around. Look here. Look at him. No, not him. Him.
3. Ghost of Tsushima. While there has not been much talk or new footage released regarding this game since its initial reveal at E3 last year, players would do well to not forget Ghost of Tsushima, as it looks really brilliant. From last year's gameplay reveal, players were shown a look at the excellent sword combat, the mechanics of which seem to be comparable to a single-player, more slow and measured version of the fighting system available in For Honor. This should create an experience that will allow players to feel like an expert swordmaster. The game itself looks absolutely beautiful along with this, and with Sucker Punch developing, Ghost of Tsushima is sure to have a rich story, much like their previous infamous series. It seems that PlayStation will soon have another classic exclusive on their hands. 2. The Last of Us, Part 2. The first Last of Us game was a masterpiece, being a fine addition to Naughty Dog's already large collection of brilliant creations. The excellent cast of voice actors and the story woven by Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley was utterly fantastic, somehow managing to be gut-wrenching and evoke swathes of emotion despite being, in essence, a zombie game. After the ending of the original title, most probably thought that it was going to be a one-and-done sort of affair due to its finality, so a sequel is potentially risky from a storytelling standpoint. Yet, from what's been seen, the second game seems set to continue Ellie's journey in a natural, enjoyable way. Improvements to gameplay are similarly impressive, given what looks like a wonderful new story. 1. Cyberpunk 2077. Mike Pondsmith's cyberpunk world is one of the most interesting takes on the genre. The cybernetic prosthetics, characters like Morgan Blackhand, unique gangs and Night City itself making for a brilliant setting for both tabletop and video games. And, out of all Of the studios that could be entrusted with this world, there is no developer more worthy than CD Projekt Red. These developers have shown their knack for making games during their time adapting the Witcher series into games, as well as how incredibly consumer-friendly the company is, and they so far seem to be bringing the same expertise and ethos to Cyberpunk 2077. The gameplay looks fun, the city's stories deep and rich, and the ability to mold your own V seeming to be similarly complex. If you want more video like that, please subscribe and comment, and, if you want to buy these games, I put links to purchase from Amazon in the description box. Thank you for watching.